Welcome to the Pub Date Podcast, the show where two book broads discuss what should happen before, during, and after your book publication date. Brought to you by Broad Book Group, with your hosts Vanessa Campos and Jen Dorsey.
Happy Friday. So today is a very special day. We have someone who I believe Jen and I have both worked with on several projects throughout several publishers and even indie clients. We're welcoming Marissa Eigenbrood of Smith Publicity. Welcome, Marissa.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. I'm so excited to be here today. We're missing Jen, of course, but excited for the two of us to have an awesome conversation and talk all things book publicity and marketing and everything in between.
Yes. So let me introduce you to the good people of the podcast listening audience. So Marissa I'm sorry, did I see that you got promoted as president?
Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, breaking news. I don't even know where it's out there. I know it's an internal message so far, but maybe it snuck its way into our newsletter or something. But yes, just as of a few days ago, I was promoted from senior vice president to president.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And that is also coming with other very exciting transitions at Smith that have been in the works for a bit, as our current president, Sandy Smith, moves into the position of CEO, and Dan, our founder and CEO, is officially kind of retreating a little bit back to that founder status. Still very much involved, in certain things, but excited to have, even more of that female stronghold at the top.
Oh, heck yes.
Overall, as we move ahead.
Heck yes. You got to let women run shit.
We get it done.
Yes, we do. But Marissa has been working closely with all teams across the company at Smith Publicity throughout her career in public relations. She has worked with nonprofits, Fortune 500 corporations, international brands, colleges, universities, you name it. She brings extensive knowledge of the publishing relations realm, as well as an organized and dedicated focus to everything she does. And we in book publishing, and even the authors that we've, worked together with, they really appreciate it, and they have nothing but great things to say about you guys.
Oh, thank you so much. The one thing I love about working in publishing and the publicity side, the marketing side of publishing, is that you just get to meet so many different people from so many different walks of life and facets of the world. And it's like, we're so not just limited to those who are part of the publishing community, but all of the incredible creatives and experts and thought leaders that are out there in the world. So we constantly joke at Smith that we are all really good at the Trivial Pursuit and Jeopardy, because we know a little bit about a lot of different things from the many different people that we get to experience and work with along the way.
And that's really what I love about working with in book publishing, specifically nonfiction, where, the audience right now knows that we do nonfiction business, but everyone brings a little bit of flavor to, their expertise and their knowledge. So I would like to get started in terms of like, hey, you have a new client. What does that process at Smith look like? So, let's say, for example, I introduced you to this client that we had at Broad Book Group, where he was looking to do SaaS B2B pricing strategies. And it was insane, because we were looking at it and we're like, wow, that is specific. That is niche. That is specific. But even more so when he's decided to incorporate like 90s hip hop and music into this. And it's like, how is this all going to tie in together? But when we started reading it, we're like, okay, this is cool. We got to introduce him to Smith.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Shout out Marcos.
Yes.
But that's there. We always like to say there are riches and niches. And I think that's such a special part about this project, is that, most people might say, oh my gosh, it's so unique, and there's such unique target audiences here. And, there definitely were broader strokes, though, that as we got to know, Marcos, we got to know the book and read through the content, there were broader strokes to it that could apply to some more general audiences that allowed us to think beyond the SaaS world. But also knowing that was such a key space for him, and knowing that that's where the decision makers really lied with his project, we could then say, okay, well, what are the podcasts? What are the blogs? What are those really key, target audience media outlets that we can zero in on in our work together? And so that's, kind of going to your question, the start of our work with anyone is asking, I always ask 3 key questions to say, why this book and why now? That's kind of one question together. Like, why is this book need to come out now as part of not only just your excitement about the messaging, but the role that it's going to play in your overall expert brand platform? And then I want to know about, what are your goals for this book? Are they to become a New York Times bestseller or to sell a certain number of copies? Or are they to use the book as a business card for more speaking and consulting or new business clients? Diving into those goals together is so helpful. And then the third one is who is this book for? So it's kind of the why, what do you hope to achieve through it? And then the who is it for? And I think that those 3 key questions are something that so a lot of times when we kind of get the chance to jump in and have those conversations, authors haven't had to think about that kind of 30,000 foot view more recently because they've been in the depths of the content of the book and the line by line research and editing and going through everything. So it's great to kind of, at that time with marketing and publicity, take the step back to the beginning of the process and really, think about, why am I doing this? Who is it for? What do I want to be sharing? And that should then dictate not only what we're doing on the publicity side, but all the ways you're talking about the book through your marketing channels and your networks as well.
Yes. So much to that. Yes. And when we start working with an author who thinks they have an idea, we like to ask the same questions. And then we encourage, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs and authors who are entrepreneurs are looking to write that first book. We encourage them to look at this as like, okay, this is a new product. This is your business plan, and continue to go back to your why, because that's really not just going to be like your powering move, but also the reason why you continue to do it, because it's daunting. It's a long process.
100%. Yeah. It is a marathon versus a sprint for sure. And
oh my God, yes.
And even I love that in working alongside you and Jen and other publishers and such too, that publication date is important. We want to celebrate that, especially from a marketing perspective in how you engage your networks and get those, around you excited to support the book, drive pre-orders, all of those important aspects. But, in a lot of those goals that extend beyond just book sales, it should be, the publication date shouldn't be the end all be all. And that's the first day the book is available to the world. I like to think of it as like the book birthday, where it just gets to grow and evolve and get bigger from there. And so I think that when you're really clear on, the fact that this is going to be a process, this is going to take time, it allows you to think about, not just everything up to that one date and put all this pressure on this one day, but really think about the long-term opportunities that lie ahead with the book and the content within it.
Right. Well, what I was going to ask is, to your point about, the pub date being such an important date for a lot of authors, in working with traditional publishing and individual authors who are self-publishing, that pub date becomes a little bit of a moving target, especially in self-publishing. And, to date, with everything that's going on with all the delays with paper and everything right now with traditional publishing, it's always a moving target. But do you find that, a lot more authors are looking for your help toward that pub date? And do you offer services after the pub date as well? Like, is there a limit to when you can start working with an author?
You kind of, to answer that last question first, Vanessa, there's not. And I think what's the key to it is alignment of expectations and alignment of goals together, depending upon when we're starting our work together. So, there are some areas of the media and the traditional media world that are still regulated, if you will, or restricted by certain timelines and guidelines as to what they'll consider when. So what I mean by that is, if you really want to give your book the chance to potentially be reviewed in the Wall Street Journal book review section, I want to emphasize there, it doesn't mean the, person who covers economics, editor, or this, because there could be other opportunities with them, that really book-centric coverage, then that you really have to make sure you're beginning with, early review copies of the book and such available, at least 4 months prior to publication date. When the target moves around a bit then with that publication date, it can cause some hiccups sometimes in the book-centric coverage that we might see land right around publication date. But usually, a lot of media is flexible to that. But I also like to say that, that this type of coverage we're talking about is such a small pocket of media. And I think that when, again, an author can kind of go into the process, not putting all this pressure on seeing this fanfare around one particular day or the week of publication, and to understand that there's great benefit to that coverage coming forth a little bit before the book comes out, and very much after the book comes out too, for months after the book comes out. Mm-hmm. That's ideal. You're just showing the relevancy of it beyond just that one particular moment in time. And so, again, I like to always just make sure we're always fully transparent in that there are very select media opportunities that live within these guidelines. But most things outside of that are going to be flexible. And that's why we can work with individuals at all different stages of their book launch process. There's one project I'm talking to, their book came out just a week ago, and they've got some amazing marketing things going on right now. The goals that we've talked about are all about thought leadership and really sharing the messaging of the book. And so we're going to kick off a campaign together the second week of January in the new year. Whereas, someone else that I talked to just earlier today, it has a book launch in mid-March of next year. So we're not necessarily in that 4-month lead time, but we have 2.5 months to still take advantage of. So we're talking about, some what we call shorter lead book-centric opportunities. It might be positioning certain excerpts of the book, having it included on certain recommended reading lists, but really making sure that they know that we're not going to probably see some of those mainstream traditional reviews, and that's okay. Their goals were not all just about how well the book does on its own. And as long as we're aligned in that, and those other initiatives of platform development for the author and expert, those things are what allows us to keep going well after publication date. There's many times we work with individuals for sometimes years after their book comes out.
I love to hear that. I love it as a publisher, as somebody who's worked in the traditional sense. I love when an author appreciates what publicity can do, not just for the book, but also for themselves, the platform, because that's really a lot of what the whole purpose is for a book for a lot of the authors that we work with. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to touch on, expectations. I feel like a lot of people, especially, new authors and sometimes authors who have had 10, 20 books, sometimes I get how will this relate back to sales? And I feel like that's something that people really need to understand and really grasp that, this is not necessarily aligned with direct sales. Do you get that a lot with customers that you're talking to?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's really important that upfront we're clear about the fact that it's very hard to see a direct correlation between publicity and book sales. And I explain that in that it's human reaction. So with publicity, with media coverage, if you do a podcast interview, if you write a byline article that's placed with Fast Company, if you, there's a review of the book or an excerpt that's published with a certain blog or other online publication, what someone decides to do after they've engaged with that coverage is out of our control completely. And what we want to make sure is that, hey, the book is ideally mentioned. There's, if possible, if the outlets are open to it's linking back to Amazon or to their website, we put all the other pieces in place to make sure that ideally someone can take action and get back to the book in some kind of way, or the author's platform in some way. But what that listener, reader, viewer decides to do when they decide to take action further, especially with buying a book, is so much out of our hands. And I think something else that we really see more so today than, I've been with Smith for over 13 years, and I think this has changed drastically from my early days at Smith, is that now if you hear a podcast interview and you hear this great expert that you're interested in, it's kind of rare that you go and immediately buy the book right away. What you're going to do instead is you're going to go find that person. You're going to start following them on their social media platforms, or you're going to sign up for a newsletter they might have. You want to engage with them a little further to kind of see what they're saying beyond just that podcast interview. And then after you've seen the consistency and kind of build a little bit of trust with that person, that's when you want to give them your money, for for lack of a better phrase, that's when you want to potentially invest in that relationship, as I do air quotes over here, further, buying their book or a course they might have, or reaching out for speaking opportunities, or whatever that next step action might be. And I think that wasn't the case years ago, where I think people might jump into buying it as much, but because of the importance of building that trust and the person behind the book and the messaging and getting to know that individual, it's so important that that authors understand, that the publicity piece is great and it builds awareness, but we place so much emphasis nowadays on those marketing channels and what you have on the other side. So actually, do you have your Sunday best on when it's time for publicity? Are you consistently sharing your thought leadership through social media platforms or select platforms? You don't need to be on all of them. Do you have the right information about your book, about your offerings on your website? A lot of times we work through some marketing consultation and discussions with authors before we begin publicity, which has been something that's really grown and evolved over, I would say, the last, 5+ years here at Smith, because those pieces are so critically important to seeing people take action on the other side. And I think too, with regards to book sales, those platform building opportunities, the speaking, the consulting, they often lead to more sales than just individual sales do, because you're able to get those bulk sales coordinated a lot of the time. And so again, just further confirms the importance of that author platform and being ready to engage with those audiences when they're brought back to you.
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely want to piggyback on that. I love the work and really the placements that you've gotten a lot of the authors that we've worked with. But one thing that I always want to, and I always reiterate with our, the authors and our clients is, just because it's there and it's on their platforms doesn't mean that your job is done. Marketing is consistent. Like you had said earlier, it's a marathon. It's definitely a marathon and not a sprint. The beautiful thing about taking all of these wonderful placements and book excerpts and really building up on that thought leadership is, I think I heard this somewhere, you call it the Gary Vaynerchuk way. You take an article and you splice it and you dice it. And yes, you are sending people to the same link, but you also have to think about over the last 5 years, one PR publicity press release would have been enough. But now you have to every minute of every hour. I heard somewhere that's if you want to be good at Pinterest, you have to post 20 to 30 times a day. And I'm like, oh,
don't be on Pinterest then. That's a lot.
Be where your audience is.
Right, exactly.
and some people think, I don't want to keep asking. But the reality is that if you're looking at the platform is, sure, you're posting 5 times a day, but is that one person that is your potential client going to see all 5 of those? Chances are no.
Mm-hmm. No,
Chances
exactly. Yeah. And that's it. When it comes to marketing, I think, really being clear on where your audience lives and spending your time there is so important. You don't need to be everything for everyone, because it's not only going to be overwhelmed by trying to keep up with that, but
yes,
you're going to water down what you're saying across all those platforms, and you're not going to be as impactful. I mean, just for even me personally, I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn and just sharing content there. And I usually try to stick to 3 posts a week. It's not 3 posts every day. It's not a ton of commitment. It still takes time. It's something that I don't take lightly in that way, but it is there. That consistency still is important to whatever platform you do commit to. And I love what you said about those media placements, is that it's not just the one time. Publicity is great in building discoverability, is great for SEO purposes, so that when people, happen to Google, author Vanessa Campos, what's coming up as the results for that. And we want to see as many of those placements as possible, of course, and diversity to those placements too. I think that's so critical. But, that publicity is just further maximized and further amplified when it's being shared through those marketing channels, and when it's reused and recycled in many different instances, like you said, the Gary Vaynerchuk, example there. And I just talked to an author the other day where she had a plan to kind of rollout, talking about her media placements that were coming in kind of hot and heavy from our work together, and everything was kind of hitting. And she's like, oh, I just don't want it to all be media placements. And so I said, it doesn't have to be. You don't have to just share it in the moment that it happens, but, save that. And there could be breaking news, in some kind of way about a company next week or a month from now, where that one point you made in that one podcast interview really kind of applies to that situation. That's a great opportunity to reshare that podcast interview, repurpose it. And so you're not having to always get new all the time either, but you keep reusing those links and the content within those links for other purposes.
Right. I always like to remind people that sometimes it's not the latest and greatest. It's something that's maybe resonated with the audience time and time again that really keeps you at the forefront. I know that, I think we first met when I was working at Entrepreneur, and I was always flabbergasted at the fact that the number one article for the entire media site was actually a list of 55 different businesses that you could start because they had their Start Your Own series. And it was the number one thing. And it was just like, well, let's splice it and dice it. And we did that. And it just continued to be number one in terms of that. So, I mean, it really isn't like, to your point, it's like, something hit, something's relevant, something that is relevant to your book and what have you. So I love this conversation because I love bouncing ideas off of people like you. And This is wonderful for me.
That number article you said there too with Entrepreneur, we've seen that with a particular article from our blog on the Smith website. We actually turned it into a separate website page because of what it did for SEO and everything. But I think it started off as like the 99 book marketing tips. And I mean, there's like really basic stuff in there that, again, a lot of times we're pulling out and turning into other pieces. And each year we've changed it to like 101, 102, just add another one to it, and it refreshes and it does all this amazing stuff for SEO and it's just kind of rankings and things, but it also just continues to give us more and more content to tap back into over time. And again, it just further proves that it's not for Entrepreneur. It's not like the article by, I don't know, Marshall Goldsmith, if he wrote one. Like, let's say, love Marshall Goldsmith, but like, it's not like because Marshall Goldsmith's name is on it. It was just this like content, like highly packed content piece that did the trick.
Absolutely. So I do want to ask you, so earlier we had talked about, how somebody starts working with you guys and how you have these 3 questions that you always ask. It's the why you're writing this, why now, and who's your audience. Is there anything that in terms of a response that kind of throws red flags that people can really take from this conversation and think like, okay, maybe I was thinking that, but maybe I need to reconsider my mindset around book publishing and publicity?
Yeah, I will say that the lovely bestseller term,
yes,
I'm not referring to Amazon. But when we hear those words come up and we hear whether Wall Street Journal and New York Times, those goals, come into play when we talk about the goals for the project, it does send up some of those orange flags. I'll give it a little bit in that, we really need to understand why they have those goals in mind. And a lot of times I find that it's because that's what they think their goal should be versus what might actually be impactful for them. That's because their friends told them that should be their goals versus being ones that are actually going to, impact the why behind the project to begin with. And so I always appreciate the opportunity to ask those questions, to, if I get that response, to educate and to help people understand kind of what it might take to get to that goal. And it is not a goal that everyone can reach. And there are a lot of strategies and such that come into play when trying to reach goals like that. And especially if it's a first-time author or a newer author, to the landscape, it's going to be a much steeper uphill battle than it is for Brene Brown and Dan Pink to get on that list. They've just got a lot of those necessary foundational elements, and more than the foundation, they've got the first and second floor built too. That house.
They've got the penthouse.
Yeah, exactly. They're already at the penthouse. They're like 25 stories up already in that. But yeah, they're probably going to get it because they just have all of these built-in pieces that are so important. your network and how your network will respond and how you can engage them in pre-ordering the book is the end all be all to bestseller lists like that. And so, sure, are there those out there that you can bring in to pay for certain degrees of support to get to a goal like that? Absolutely. And we don't frown upon that if that's really important to you, but we'll talk about that as an option if they haven't considered it before. If it's that important to them to potentially reach a bestseller list like that. So I would say that's, piece number one that sometimes can give us a bit of pause. The other thing that comes up sometimes is how much of a partner the author wants to be in the process of all of this. And, when we hear things like, well, I wrote the book, I don't really want to write a lot more after that, or I'm hiring you to do this for me. That's not how publicity works. That's not how marketing works anymore, especially. And I like to your writing is certainly not done with the last page of the book. And there has to be a lot of collaboration and engagement with our authors that we work with. And, whether that's going to be in the form of content they're creating for our efforts with byline articles or op-eds or personal essays, depends on what space they come from. If it's around, hey, there's breaking news or immediate contact is wanting to get expert commentary for a piece, how quickly can they give us a quick soundbite of their thoughts? All of those things are really important to seeing a campaign be as successful as possible. So we really have to make sure there's alignment on their willingness to be a partner with us through that process as well. And brainstorm and things like that too. We're not the experts here. They are. We're the experts in publicity. We need to constantly dig those nuggets out of their brain beyond what's in the pages of the book.
Oh, yeah. No, it's always amazing when you start talking to an author and they just say like, oh, haphazardly, I did this thing. It's like, that's amazing. Can we really grill down on that? And they're like, really? That's a good idea. I'm like, yeah, that's the basis of this. So it's always really interesting. Yeah, no, you never think about it until somebody comes in. And that's really what I love about working with Smith. It's that it's really a community effort. And it takes a village. And you heard it here, guys. The work is never done. No. The writing is never finished. And I've as you heard here, Marissa is constantly writing and sharing content on her LinkedIn page. And if you don't follow her, please do. She's got a lot of really great things. And I did see that you guys are having a panel about, a review of 2022. Where can people go ahead and sign up for that?
Sure. So we're doing, we had a webinar series that we launched around our 25th anniversary for 2022. And we're going to keep that going in 2023 on a quarterly basis. So our first one is January 11th. If you go to my LinkedIn, you'll find the event posted in there. And so you can sign up and we'll have the Zoom information sent out to everybody, right before. But that's going to include our 3 publicity managers talking about trends and what we expect to see moving ahead into 2023. So really excited. We love to just share knowledge and education wherever possible at Smith. So whether it's through my LinkedIn, our webinars, our newsletter, our blog, we have a podcast too.
Yes.
Yes. All those great things. We love to share our knowledge and the knowledge of others around us as much as we can. So there's a lot of great resources for that.
Yeah. And that's really the key in finding your true partner in publicity in your book publishing. People who are willing to share the resources and not gatekeep.
Oh, yeah. Listen, it's, as you said, it takes a village, and it takes a village to release a book and work toward the goals that we're talking about. And, if you ever find a one-stop shop in the world of publishing, buyer beware is all I have to say. Building out your team, you want everybody who focuses on certain areas versus trying to find someone who can do it all, because it's probably gonna be better off the other way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for joining us today. We're definitely missing Jen today, but we will have you back on in the new year, and Jen will be with us. And, just thank you again. I really love our conversations. It's just like bouncing ideas back and forth. And this could really be like a few-hour situation, but we are limited on time.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to be here. And again, always love chatting with you, Vanessa. It comes so easily every time, and happy to come back whenever the time's right.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much to our producer, Paul Roberts of OC Talk Radio, and our executive producer, Emily Carpenter-Pulskamp of Little Red Communications. Until next time.
We hope that you gained some valuable insights into the world of book publishing. Head over to broadbookgroup.com to learn more about us and all our services. And be sure to check out all our social media at Broad Book Group. Until then, keep publishing.